Hello, everyone. Welcome to our community conversation. I'm just going to give it just a minute or so here as we see people are coming in before we get started. I see so many familiar names on this list and a lot of names that aren't familiar. So I'm really excited to have all of you joining us today. All right. Looks like the numbers slowed down a bit. Okay. All right. Well, we have a lot to share today. I have some amazing panelists, so I'm going to just get started now. Hello, everyone. I am Nicole Mahoney. I am CEO of Travel Alliance Partnership, also known as TAP, and podcast host of Destination on the Left, a show focused on creativity and collaboration in the travel and tourism industry. Welcome to our first community conversation in 2026. We know there are a lot of changes happening in the travel and tourism industry, and it can be hard to keep up. So our goal is to support the travel community by being proactive and forward focused. Attendees of this webinar cover a broad base of the travel ecosystem, including DMOs, attractions, accommodations, tour operators, travel advisors, freelance travel writers, industry associations, and consultants. And I love that so many members of our community find this subject to be important and are open to learning more. I encourage you to submit questions through our question submission button, should they come up as we go along. My hope is that today's conversation is the start and not the end of an ongoing collaboration within the industry. And travel tied to events, especially major sporting events, festivals, concerts, and cultural experiences, is growing rapidly and represents a significant share of the tourism market. With America 250 taking center stage this year, along with the FIFA World Cup, 100th anniversary of Route 66, and so many more, I wanted to bring this discussion to our community. Whether you are hosting a major event, are part of a milestone anniversary, or involved in a regional celebration, these types of events are catalysts for future growth. And I've brought together panelists who can speak to how they have leveraged events for their communities and organizations. So we're going to start with a short overview of recent research from Longwoods International, followed by 4 questions for our panelists that we hope to get through in 45 minutes in order to leave time at the end for any questions submitted through the chat. So if you submitted questions with your registration, I hope our conversation covers them, but feel free to ask for a follow-up if you don't think it was covered. And questions can be submitted in the chat as they come to you, and we will do our best to get to them before the hour is up. So let's get into the discussion. Welcome, panelists, and thank you so much for joining me. Each of you brings a different lens to this conversation, and I'm excited to present so many varied aspects of this important part of the tourism industry. So let's start by having each of you introduce yourself. And for context, tell us a little about your organization and share the lens that you bring to this conversation about events. And Deborah, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, hi, I'm Deborah Ross. I am the publisher of kidsoutandAbout.com, which is a media and marketing platform that actually launched this coming June. It'll be 25 years. We launched in the Rochester area. And over time, the network has expanded. So our mission is to celebrate what different communities bring for kids, teens, and families all over the country. We are now in 52 regions in the US and Canada with 15 million readers a year. And so we run it all from our Rochester office. I got involved in tourism starting in about 2009, 2010, specifically in Rochester, and was Visit Rochester's Visitor Industry Council Chair in 2018, which was really fortunate because in 2017, I started the Rochester Eclipse Task Force to prepare our region for the 2024 eclipse. And people thought, 7 years, what are you doing? No, it almost wasn't long enough. But what ended up happening was our region got so cohesive that we started to become active nationally. So in 2022, I brought a kind of tourism lens to the American Astronomical Society's National Eclipse Task Force and helped communities around the country prepare for that event. So that I'm looking at this through the kind of dual lens of marketing communities, but also having been so instrumental in the Solar Eclipse Task Force and seeing how all kinds of communities leveraged that event. And the recent author of a book called The Eclipse Effect, How to Seize Extraordinary Moments to Build Strong Communities. That was pretty long. Sorry
Awesome.
about that.
Thank you, Deborah. And Amir, welcome.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Amir Elan. I am the president and CEO of Longwoods International, market research consultancy that specializes in the travel and tourism industry. I'm a 37-year veteran of the travel industry, and prior to the last 10 years of running Longwoods, I like to say I'm a recovering destination marketing executive. I've had a lot of experience in the event side of things, but I'm here because we do a lot of research about American travelers and their sentiments and their behavior and so forth, and have a lot of interesting information on events. And we're going to share a little bit of that with you here shortly. But I also want to thank you all for showing up today and not watching the March Madness basketball games going on right now.
I appreciate that too. And Jean, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm Jean McKay. I'm the Deputy Director at the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor. And we are a federally designated National Heritage Area that spans from Albany all the way to Buffalo along the Erie Canal in New York. And our territory also includes the Champlain Canal, the Cuca-Seneca Canal, and the Oswego Canal, and the surrounding communities. So within that, we have a pretty big mission to try to help communities and sites protect the incredible canal resources that we have, to share them widely with youth and families and adults, and also to promote tourism and recreation along the canal. Last year was a big year for us because it was the bicentennial of the Erie Canal. And so there were celebrations and activities throughout the year. And I was part of a team that led that effort, which meant that I was involved in coordinating community outreach and media. We maintained an events calendar for the events that were happening along the canals throughout the year. We were involved in promoting activities, and we also planned and hosted the World Canals Conference in Buffalo as part of the bicentennial celebrations. So thank you for having me, and I'm eager to share some of that experience with you today.
Amazing. Thank you. And Jennifer, welcome.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Miller. I'm the manager of domestic tourism for Visit Detroit. But in a previous position, I was the manager of events for about 21 years. So I had a great opportunity to work on some really amazing marquee sporting events, like the All-Star Game, Super Bowl, Final Fours, Frozen Fours. Visit Detroit is a DMO that was created in 1896, so we're celebrating our 130th anniversary. But our mission is really to generate economic impact for our region and to promote the area as a premier destination for leisure visitors, meetings, conventions, and sporting events. So I'm excited to be here today.
Amazing. And I'm really excited for all of the different viewpoints that you all bring to this conversation. Before we get into the questions, though, I'd love to have Amir kick us off with some of the latest research from Longwoods, and it'll give us a good framework for the conversation as we move forward.
Absolutely. So I think we need to share the screen here, and here we go. The slides are coming up there, and our wonderful behind the scenes assistant will be advancing those. So apologies in advance for little pauses in between. I'm going to share with you a little bit of very recent research that we've just done over the last couple months, coming from our monthly tracker called the American Travel Sentiment Study. We actually started this tracker 6 years ago at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, right before the kind of the shutdown that we had for a little while there. And it was really a tracker about American travel sentiment towards COVID. Obviously, it's evolved beyond that. And every month we sample a representative sample of over 1,000 American travelers, asking them a series of questions on various topics and areas of items that might influence their decision to travel and how they travel. So in the last few waves of this study that we've done, we have asked about some of the special events coming forth this year, because 2026 really is a year of celebration. Nicole mentioned America 250, the FIFA World Cup. We also have the centennial of Route 66. So a lot of things happening above and beyond the usual type of special events. I do want to acknowledge our good friends at Miles Partnership, because they help us offset the costs of this study that we make available for free, the travel industry. And I'll put a link at the end. You can, if you want to subscribe and download these slides. So next slide, please. All right, so first, to kind of put it in the context, we're going through some crazy times right now, especially on the global stage. There's a lot of concern between the economy, what's happening in world events. How is that going to impact travel? Well, of course, it'll all have impacts in different ways. But the one thing it's not going to do, it's not going to stop people from traveling. 9 out of 10 American travelers actually have plans to go somewhere in the next 6 months. That's 9 out of 10. So yes, there are certain people changing their travel planning because of their financial concerns, otherwise in there. But the bottom line is, it's a phenomenon that we have seen since the immediate post-pandemic. Whereas for American travelers, travel has shifted from a want to a need, which means they are willing to make certain lifestyle decisions to help prioritize travel and economize in other areas just so they can make that trip happen. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, talking about those concerns. Now, of course, this last survey was completed, just before the war in Iran began. We have another survey that's just coming out of the field right now, which we'll be releasing next week, which will have some updated information. But going post the war in the Middle East, there, as you can see, 1/3 of American travelers are telling us that their concerns for their own personal financial situation will greatly impact their decision to travel within the next 6 months. And again, about 1/3 telling us that airfare concerns, inflationary concerns there. Ironically, pre-war in Iran, when again, I'm sure this number is going to change when I see it here in a few days, but only 1 out of 5 are really concerned about rising gas prices at the time, or at the time the gas prices weren't rising. So we'll see what happens there. But again, as I told you, 1/3 say it's going to greatly impact. They're changing how they travel. They might travel closer to home because the airfare might have gone up. They may take more road trips again, which is going to play into what we're seeing here with special events. It's going to be maybe a little less dining out, packing sandwiches for the road. Maybe we're going to see a little less souvenir shopping in there. At the same time, just keep in mind, they're not canceling really. We're seeing at any given point about 5% of trips being canceled. That's not bad, considering that 2 or 3% of trips get canceled anyway because of family emergency, health issues, work issues, whatever in there. So let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about some special sporting events here. Right now, we asked the question very recently here in the past month about within the next 12 months, how likely are you to travel overnight to attend special sporting events, such as professional or college sporting events or international competitions taking place in the U.S. And as you can see, 1/3 of American travelers tell us they're either somewhat or very likely to travel overnight to do that this year. I think that's a pretty heavy number, especially the 14% that are very likely. That's really significant. Let's go to the next slide. And when we're talking about World Cup, because that FIFA World Cup's coming, it's going to be in June to early July. And as you can see, 20%. So 1 out of 5 American travelers say they're somewhat likely or very likely. Focus in on the 7% very likely. I know that we're expecting a very large global audience coming to the U.S. for World Cup. But at the same time, as we've seen, the barriers to travel that are happening, the visa wait times, other issues of concern that we're not quite sure yet how that's all going to pan out. we're probably going to see, the reality is, I'll say it right now, we're probably going to see a little higher domestic mix into the World Cup than we're expecting before, which again works well for U.S. domestic destinations that are that like those road trippers. So stay tuned on that. Let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about special cultural or entertainment events in general. Within the next 12 months, how likely are you to travel overnight to spend special cultural or entertainment events such as concerts, music festivals, or local cultural festivals? And look at that. Basically, one half of American travelers telling us they are either somewhat or very likely to do that, with one out of six saying they're very likely to do that. Let's go to the next slide. And there's a Route 66 centennial happening this year. Very exciting. And as we know, the Route 66 is a very long stretch of road. And as we're looking at this, we've asked this question actually a couple of times. We asked it last summer for the first time, and you saw then that 69%. This was still kind of the early radar outside of the real big planning windows. So 69% said that they were slightly interested or extremely interested in touring part or all of Route 66 within the next year. Now it's 47%. We're getting closer to the event, to the celebrations. We're in that centennial year now. And there's kind of the realistic part with 15%. So think about that. There's a potential for as many as 15% of American travelers this year that are going to travel part of or all of Route 66 in there. So, and remember, you're going from basically Chicago to Santa Monica Pier. So and also all places in between. So that's tremendous. Let's go to the next slide. And again, talking about Route 66, when we're looking at, okay, so for those who said they were very likely to travel, of the 17%, 7% said they have already booked their travel there. So the bookings are already happening there. The 35% are saying, yeah, I'm coming, but I haven't quite booked my travel yet. Let's go. Next slide. And again, why are they going to tour Road 66? Well, road trips. They're going to check it out. 1/3 are telling us the primary reason is just to go through the natural beauty, historically significant parts of the U.S. 1/3 are telling us it's really to hang out with my family and friends. It's really just to kind of do some togethering, getting out there, and it just seemed like a natural fit to do part of Route 66 in there. And for 1 out of 6, it's basically the most direct route for their destination. It'll take them to, appreciate the honesty. That's a good thing. And 14%, though, to specifically commemorate the 100th anniversary. So again, road trips have been on the rise in this country for several years now. So it's not a surprise that it didn't, the 100th anniversary is just kind of the icing on the cake. Next slide. And let's talk about America 250 here before we wrap up. So we asked the question as the year was ending, New Year was beginning. We asked, tell us about your awareness of America 250. Well, marketers, we got a little bit of work to do because as 2026 was kicking off, only about half of American travelers said they were aware America 250 was happening. Let's go to the next slide. And we asked those, for those who were aware, we asked them how they plan to celebrate. And half said they're going to be visiting historical sites or landmarks. Almost half said they're going to visit museums and cultural attractions. 4 out of 10 said we're going to attend specific America 250 events. 1/3 said they're going to attend historical reenactments, living history events, etc. In there. And let's go to the next one. And then we've asked this question here, which I think is the telling one. So from those 48% who said they're aware of the America 250 and are likely to take a trip, they said they are 65% said that they are somewhat or very likely to take a day trip. And from the higher value customer, the overnighter, we're looking at 61% planning to at this point take an overnight trip. I really look at the very likelies, the 27%. So this could bode very, very well if we do a great job of marketing those special events. Next slide. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You can go to our website here in the link, and you can and register for free to pick up that information. And I thank you all for indulging me in this quick overview.
Thank you so much, Amir. And I really appreciate that, because while this was very specific to America 250 and Route 66, I think what it does show is that when there are events, milestones, commemorations, like, we do have a very big opportunity to not only attract folks for those events specifically, but also to keep them coming back or encourage return visitation or expand our reach. And so this very first question that I would like our panelists to give us some perspective on, and I'm going to start this one with Deborah, of course, with the eclipse as your lens. From your experience, share how you and your organization and the organizations you were involved with strategically approached events and how they have helped you expand your reach.
Sure, absolutely. So, as publisher of Kids Out and About, I don't do events. I promote events because doing the actual event is much too hard. And it is, it all comes down to like a very small amount of time where a lot of people sort of decide what's successful or not. In the case of the eclipse, it was anywhere from like 2 minutes to 4 minutes on April 8th of 2024. So, but I've had this really unique window for the last quarter century into communities and how they manage them. Healthy communities, not healthy communities, ones that have sort of stuck together and ones that fell apart. And from the vantage point of looking at all of these very varied communities out across the country that managed eclipse preparations and then eclipse events themselves, I noticed some commonalities among those who were successful. So there was almost always one or a few enthusiastic leaders who were sort of the center of mass, believing in the ultimate success, both of the event and also sort of the success for the people involved in it, that are willing to work really, really, really hard beyond reason, both to make the small things happen, but also to pull a community together for a long time in advance of the event, and celebrating, helping that community, those individuals in the community, celebrate their milestones. Also common to success was starting early, and starting early in the face of skepticism really turned out to work. And also that any leader, this wasn't a matter of somebody having an idea and having a vision and then saying, everybody follow me, let's go this way. It was much different. It was that leaders recognized that very diverse community belonged in that room together planning, and that such a community thrives when stakeholders come from a diverse set of backgrounds and networks with different skills and orientations and ideas, where all of them can do that together. So that's what I noticed for success, for making that eclipse just, part of everybody's life in April of 2024.
Yes, and those are really good. I love how you kind of key into the leadership aspect too, and not that it's the rallying cry of one leader, but that that's this more collaborative effort. I so appreciate that, and I'm curious now for you, Jean, with what you just came away from with the Erie Canals Bicentennial. Can you tell us a little bit about how you use that strategically for the Erie Canalway, as well as how it helped expand your reach?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it was just such a big opportunity for us. And we knew that, this kind of opportunity only comes around for us once every 200 years to have a bicentennial, or to have the spotlight shining on you. And the main thing is you want to be ready. You want to be ready yourself. You want to help any partners be ready. And so that was part of our approach. But I want to take a step back to say that in 2017, we did some research on the economic impact and direct spending from events and tours along the canal. And it was just under $1 billion a year. And so as an organization, we sort of said, this is an important thing for us to invest in, because events are the gateway that often get people here for the first time and get them aware that we exist, that there's amazing things to do along the canals. And we had a small events sponsorship program at the time where we were giving out, $500 a year to certain events. And so we partnered with the New York State Canal Corporation, and we've increased the amount of money that we're able to give to support events. And we now support about 35 events a year. And last year we tied that all into the bicentennial, so that those that were planning bicentennial events would have the opportunity to have a little bit more money to work with. And so we were able to support 30 bicentennial events through the sponsorship program. We also promoted more than 250 events on our events calendar that we built for the bicentennial. And then that program gives us a chance to work with event partners and kind of tap into what they need and how we can support them, and also how we can communicate with them important trends and things that they need to know in the Heritage Corridor. The other thing that we did for the bicentennial was we created a bicentennial marketing toolkit, and that had graphics, social media frames, and social media content, banners, things that our communities and sites could take advantage of to unify the look and feel of the bicentennial, so that no matter where anybody went, it would have a unified look. More than 800 people signed up for that toolkit, and the content and the logos were shared widely. So you saw it when you went into communities, on banners, on signs along the waterway. It was on event flyers. It made its way to bicentennial beer that breweries created. I saw it on a cookie at an event once. So it was fun to see the ways that people were able to, kind of get on board. And, that's part of our role, is to be that connector and convener to help people do that.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate too that you had the research that said why events are important to the canal, and then you use that research to make different funding decisions, like finding a collaborative partner and putting more money into supporting events that your partners are doing along the canalway, as well as the marketing toolkit. Such a great way to expand the reach. Jennifer, how about you in Visit Detroit? How do you use events strategically?
For us, we've been really working hard strategically to use more of the sporting events. Based on Amir's presentation, sporting events really galvanize people. Everybody has a favorite team. And so for us, our challenge has been, and it's been a long 25-year process, is really changing the narrative of our city from a Rust Belt city to a vibrant city. We really started this process really in 2004 to 2010. We had strategically positioned our destination in a national and international spotlight by hosting the Ryder Cup, All-Star Game, Super Bowl, Final Fours, Frozen Fours. These events really helped to create that awareness of our destination. They provided that national and international coverage, both in the advertising for the event, but more important, for the national coverage during the event, because the world saw Detroit as a vibrant city. It saw the authenticity of our city, kind of the vibe. When the announcers are talking about things that they did, that lends credibility to our destination. So what the result of that was, and what helped us expand our reach, is that through those marquee events, we were able to then take the next 2010 to 2020, and really hone in on the meetings and convention side. Because of that great publicity and successful execution of those events, we were then able to secure major marquee meetings and conventions like American Society of Association Executives. Evangelical Lutheran Church in America was 30,000 kids in Detroit. Which prior to hosting those events, people didn't really think about bringing kids to Detroit. And so that was really a big thing for us. The most recent example of it for us is really the NFL draft. 775,000 people came to Detroit And then 50 people from all 50 states and 20 countries were in attendance at that event. It brought, speaking of economic impact, $213 million in economic impact to the region. But more important for our group is the 12.3 million of direct visitor spending that our destination got. Because of the NFL draft, because of the Detroit Tigers playoff run, the Lions playoff runs, that brought us national coverage on, Nightline, Good Morning America. That's coverage we couldn't afford to buy if we wanted to. And by that, we ended up getting an increase in leisure visitors. International visitation is up. We're proactive in several countries. It's led to more meetings and conventions. Last week, we hosted the National Marriott Sales Team, which is a direct result of all that great coverage we've gotten and people talking in the media about Detroit. It's opening up future bids for NBA All-Star games and NHL games. So I know those are really large sporting events that not every city can host, but think about those amateur sports or AAU sports leagues that, maybe tournaments that you could get that could bring people to your destination and kind of expose them to your tourism attractions and the things that your community can provide.
Absolutely, I love that. And using events in the way that you're talking about it, first of all, to gain that national spotlight and maybe get press that you wouldn't otherwise get. But then in addition to that, having that lead to future business for your community, I think is really key. And Amir, any final thoughts on this question before we move on?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, especially when you're having signature events or of some sort happening in your community. It's a great opportunity to unite the communities around the core where those things happen. I'll use an example. Last couple of years, Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, for example, that kind of helped spawn the whole term of gig tourism and what that was doing, bringing people in from multiple days into the host cities for the tour. I'll use one example, like Cincinnati, for example, for the dates of the tour that stopped in Cincinnati. They transformed into Swiftinati, and what they ended up doing was they were really creating a series of mini events for Taylor Swift fans, whether they were going to the concert or not, and just wanted to kind of feel like they belong. But y'all knew they were going to come anyway to around the downtown, around the arena, around the stadiums and so forth where she was playing. But these were events that were being held as far as 25, 30 miles away across the river in northern Kentucky, out in the northern suburbs of Cincinnati, and so forth. So it got other surrounding communities involved, engaged, and helped also disperse some of the tourism dollars throughout a little further throughout the region. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I like that you brought that up, because even if you aren't hosting the event yourself, you can still take advantage of that traffic. And I know I've had a lot of people talk to me about like the FIFA World Cup in particular, and how do you take that momentum that's being built from this event and take advantage of it in your community, even if you're not one of those World Cup sites, as a for example. And so one way you might do that is through partnerships. And I'd love to kind of get your take on how new partnerships can be forged as a result of an event or milestone anniversary, and maybe talk a little bit about how you created those partnerships. And I'd love to start with you, Jean.
Okay, great. Well, our organization works in partnership all the time, so this is kind of a key thing. But as a lead organization for the bicentennial, and I think I'm hoping that listeners can sort of think about these things too, even if you're not as a lead. But we asked ourselves, what was our unique position? How could we be involved and be the most effective? What did we have the capacity to do that related to this anniversary, or to now we're asking the same questions for America's 250? And how can you advance your mission by getting involved or partnering with somebody? And so with those three things, we then identified, well, who are our partners at the federal level, state level, regional, local, and even international, because we were hosting the World Canals Conference. What we found is that many organizations wanted to get involved, but they weren't sure how, or they weren't sure they had They were waiting maybe for permission for someone to say, sure, you can be involved. And some with a big anniversary like America's 250 or with the Erie Canal Bicentennial, I think some organizations and communities thought, well, someone else is doing the organizing and they'll tell me what to do, or they'll have a big idea and they'll have money and I'll tap into it. And in our case last year, that really wasn't the case so much. I mean, there was statewide organizing, but it came together, a little slowly. And so my message to people was that we are all making the bicentennial what it is. You have permission to do whatever you want to do and make it big and tap into it, make it bicentennial. Even the things that you already do every day, just put the bicentennial spin on them and get more mileage and tap into that bigger theme. And so I think empowering people to be involved in their own way, to think about like, what can they do and do well, and really take advantage of whatever it is, whether it's a sports event or a historical thing or a concert, is sort of, getting involved in and building on the momentum. And the more people that are involved, the bigger the event can be. And the more, everybody wins from that. So, we built a lot of great partnerships. And again, through the toolkit that we did, those are partnerships that we will continue for the future, and I always feel like you don't want to do a one-off because it's too much work to put in, to put in so many hours towards a particular event, whether it's like the World Canals Conference, you're going to work your tail off for 3 or 4 day conference. I'm like, no, we'll do the conference, but what can I get afterwards that can really live beyond this one thing? And I think Deborah is shaking her head yes, because the eclipse was a similar experience. So
yeah,
anyway.
Absolutely. Well, before we go to Deborah, because I know she's got a lot to share on this subject, but Jennifer, I'd love to hear your take on partnerships and how you've used events to forge new partnerships.
Well, I think the developing the partnerships, we looked at it as, when we create these partnerships, how can they impact and affect the community? And so obviously when you're doing these large events, you want to really create that local host committee that galvanize your civic leaders, your business leaders, your city and state government people. So Detroit created a local host committee in 1982 for Super Bowl. And because that was so successful, the NFL actually used that model and put it in their RFPs moving forward. And it's now kind of a best practices amongst the all RSVPs and meetings and conventions. But by bringing that community together, we still have that core nexus of people that we've been working with over the past 25 years and expanding that. One of the things that we expanded for the NFL draft is how can we get more of our small minority business owners, our local business people involved. So by creating partnerships with the chamber, with the City of Detroit Small Business Office, with like the Bedrock Development community, we were able to connect. We were able to get a result of 40% of the local contracts were given to minority small businesses in our region, which is really big when you're hosting these big events. Another thing that was created because of our relationships and partnerships, we really tapped into our nonprofit community. How could we leverage these big events to help local nonprofit agencies? So our sports commission started in 2009 and really is in effect today, where they identified literacy and education as one of their key initiatives. And $1.5 million went into our Living Legacy Initiative, which gave grants to the Beyond Basics education program, the Project Play, Starfish, community services. And that's really a great thing for a offshoot for our local community. Those are dollars that are going to go to our youth, our kids, giving them accessibility to sports and education. So that was really a great thing for us. And leading into what Amir said too is we also created for the NFL draft the On the Clock tour. We collaborated with our city recreation centers, tri-county agencies, because really Metro Detroit is 3 different counties. And we took this On the Clock tour around our tri-county area to give the community the opportunity to feel like they were a part of this big event that was coming, even though they didn't have tickets. You could bring your kids to this On the Clock tour and be a part of it, feel like you had access to it, and really created that community feel. It was so successful that other cities around the state of Michigan called and said, hey, any chance you'd bring that up to our community? So they did take it to Grand Rapids and Flint and Kalamazoo. And because it was so successful, we're going to do it again and call it the Fan Jam for the NCAA Final Four, which will start probably August of 26, getting ready for 27. And again, trying to get the state to feel like they're part of it and our tri-county area to feel like a part of it, and give other communities a chance to get some of those dollars, if that makes any sense.
Great. Those are absolutely awesome, awesome ideas and a great way to extend. And I'm sure Deborah has a lot to jump in on this one.
Well, yeah, I was really loving Jean's point about just sort of individual leaders deciding that they just have permission to get stuff done, but also to empower others to get stuff done. Because every time you connect to people within your community, or in your community and outside your community, you're giving those 2 people a gift. And you might never see the results of that gift that you've just created, but just the fact that it's invisible doesn't mean that it's not true and important. And what you're doing is you're overcoming a kind of a natural inertia that people have to reach out and be connected. But somebody needs to sort of decide they have permission to do it. And so it really is that gift, like as a granular point. For the National Eclipse Task Force, the American Astronomical Society, one of the amazing values of those partnerships were the partnerships outside of science and education that came about because of the eclipse, right? Like in transportation, in tourism fundamentally, in arts and culture. And they're doing a very good job at the AAS of maintaining those connections because they see the value. Conversely, small community leaders or tourism partners saw partnership with science specifically as being hugely valuable. Visit Erie in Erie, Pennsylvania. They had this wonderful award-winning initiative called the Ultimate Sunblock. And one of the observations that came out of Erie was that nerds make the best tourists because they clean up after themselves, they spend a lot of money, and they celebrate what it is that they're doing. And so that's part of their vision going forward. And another aspect of the partnerships that were formed because of the eclipse actually came from someone who I learned, who texted me during this conference, who's on the call, Trish Ertzfeld from Perryville, Missouri. She's the tourism director there, and they were in the path of both 2017's eclipse and 2025's eclipse, 24's eclipse. And so the community that Trish pulled together ended up such a strong network. And then unfortunately, they had the opportunity to demonstrate that because in January of 2025, Perryville had a devastating ice storm. And what happened was that Trish's network, the Eclipse Tourism Network, through emergency management and government and tourism and arts and everybody, they instantly snapped into action to help their community recover as fast and quickly and as connectedly as possible. So the connections then, the partnerships that were forged, they don't just go away just because an event is over. Those are real people there who actually know each other now, and that they can have just sort of reverberating into the future those effects. So shout out to Trish and your community, and to really everybody who pulled together to manage this eclipse. It was quite a thing.
Yeah, those are amazing examples. And Amir, do you have anything to add to this part of the conversation?
Yeah, I just want to build on what Jennifer and Deborah were talking about in their examples. Especially the idea of the notion of non-traditional partnerships. Especially those on the tourism side. For many of these events, unless they're signature events like a Super Bowl or something that's got a little bit big sponsor dollars behind it. There aren't a lot of big, there are more small budget events than big budget events out there. A lot of these are organized by non-for-profits and so forth. So looking at those other businesses, those other type of businesses that may be trying to reach a similar audience, but for different purposes. An auto manufacturer, automobile maker who's trying to reach family travelers, the same reason the destination marketing organization is trying to reach family travelers, etc. Are there collaborations to be had? A school supply company, you name it. There's all kinds of opportunities to happen to use these events as a way to start forging those relationships and then carry them on to other marketing initiatives and so forth down the road.
I love that, and such a great point. I just want to do a quick time check. I'm going to ask you this third question, and then just so our attendees know, we're going to get to some attendee questions because I'm getting some notes here that we have some before we wrap up with the last one. So I'm giving the panelists a little heads up here. So this next question is really about how we leverage major events or milestones to create future opportunities for our community or our organization. And I know all of you have done a lot with that. And so I'm going to start with you, Jennifer, if you could share about how you are leveraging these events for the future.
For us, really, it's about bringing in national or international media and site visits with meeting planners during these big events, showcasing the city when it's really at its busiest. Giving a meeting planner or media an opportunity to see how the city operates and how we can hum along and everything is successfully executed. Now, this is an example of Detroit Auto Show is in January every year. And every year, obviously, everybody knows January is a difficult month to get visitors, tourists, meetings and conventions. Weather is unpredictable, but we really do bring people in to the Detroit Auto Show charity preview night because we want to showcase the city when it's at its most beautiful. It's like prom. Everybody's dressed up in black tie. The convention center is absolutely gorgeous, these big exhibits. And it really shows that if we can execute a major auto show like that and those giant exhibits, we can do just about anything. And a direct result of that was American Bus Association had come in for one of our charity previews, and we were able to book them in February of 23. So, you wouldn't think, you think, oh, just show your destination in the summer and when it looks pretty and warm, but think about also using those events to showcase your city, even in months that might not necessarily be the best, but worked out for us.
So much creativity in this group, and I knew there would be. I love it. Deborah, how about you? How would you leverage major events or a milestone like the eclipse for future opportunities?
Right. I think that the main purpose of the leader is to be articulating and the fact that these connections have occurred between partners, between people working on the event, and sort of encouraging them to the connections to be sustained. So, and also just even though they're invisible, sort of thinking of them as real. So if Adrienne, if you don't mind putting up the slide, we actually here in Rochester measured the community that was created. So we did a survey afterwards and asked the 174 most involved people if they could, like, who they knew before, who they knew after, and then to sort of say which connections were new. And this is an actual picture of the new connections that were formed among these people in this community. And most people don't do surveys after these and actually see that data. But I thought it was really important to make the point that those connections are real and that the extent to which you can encourage the connections between people afterwards to keep doing great things is really important. So that's why I thought we could show this slide and just sort of just use that to articulate the point.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. The connections that are made, I think, we talked about it previously, the partnerships that are made. You gave the example of Trish and her community and what can be done as a result. I think that's a really great visual reminder of that. And Jean, how about you? How are you leveraging the milestone for the future of the Erie Canalway?
Well, I want to give two examples of that and echo what Deborah is saying, that you form these partnerships and so you want to keep them going and stay in touch. And I was surprised by the number of regional partners that really organizations that had never worked together, didn't really know each other until they started to communicate for the bicentennial. I think one of the things for leveraging the future is, for us, is always keeping our eye on what the mission is, because that's kind of the through line that the event, like that's why you're having the event, isn't really the mission. The event is just the means to get there. So with the bicentennial, yes, it was about looking back at 200 years of history, but it was really about looking forward to the next 200, or thinking about the next century. And so we took the opportunity to put together a next century campaign to articulate what our goals were for the next 100 years, and to put some fundraising behind that, and to really put out that the next century really could be our best. How are we going to make it better than the last 200? And so that's an important thing, that now we have articulated a mission that we can continue to keep people rallied around. I also want to mention that one of the goals that we identified was around universal accessibility, and welcoming people of all abilities to recreate along the canal. This has been something that we've identified as a priority, and others along the canal have too, but we've been able to, through events, prioritize that our event hosts think about that they think about how they market events differently. And we've been able to partner with disability advocates and trainers to bring training to event hosts now. And we'll continue to do that so that we can really try to work towards that goal through the events that we fund and that we host in the future.
I love how you brought it back to mission, and to really keep, what your goal is basically in mind. And it's not just this one-time event. And Amir, how about you? What thoughts are coming to you as it relates to this?
It's about the repeat visitation. It was touched on a little bit earlier here, but this is, especially again this year, as I was telling you, it's going to be the year of the Great American Road Trip. Regional drive markets are going to do really well given the market forces that are out there. So when we see that happening, you're going to see a lot of repeat visitation. A lot of it's going to be event driven. What an opportunity while you have them, or if you're capturing information on them, remarketing to them to come back, spend a little more time, or build upon hey, while you're here, do one more thing, a little too much for just one day, and stay the extra night, and maybe you'll get that. But repeat visitation is all the opportunity, I think, this year.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay, we're gonna turn to some questions from the audience, and just so you know, we'll do that for about 5-ish minutes. With a couple minutes left, I'm going to do a speed round with that last question. So panelists, get your speed answers ready. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask Camille, I think is the one that's going to be reading us the questions.
Yes.
All right.
All right, we've got 3 good ones and not a lot of time, so it's hard to pick. I'll start with what are ways to market to the events attendees pre, during, and post to get them to engage in other tourism assets within the community when you aren't the event organizer?
Who would like to take that one, Jean? Maybe.
I'm trying to. I'm getting there. I think you want to just work every channel you have, right? So you're going to work social media. You're going to have stuff on the website. If you're not the event organizer, you may want to reach out and see if you can tap into the event, and look at what the themes are for it, and echo those things so that you are mirroring in a way some of the marketing that's happening. I guess I'm going to stop there because I suspect other people have good answers too.
Other thoughts, Deborah or Jennifer?
Deborah, you want to go or?
No, your area of expertise.
All right. I think for us, really tapping into that social media, so much of the marketing now is on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, these reels, and, using our B-roll footage and the events, logos and the event information, and filling that all in so that we can show, come for this event, but look, you have all these different museums and restaurants and hotels to stay at to really kind of push that message out to say, don't just come for the event, but come for all these other museums and attractions and things, walk along the river, go over to Windsor, Canada, really showing our destination with the information and the logos from those particular events. And then, for Amir, working with kind of our outlying areas, our cities like Novi, Southfield, Dearborn, and getting them to maybe do, hotel special promotions or restaurant promotions based on those events as people are coming in.
So I was going to add that I think it's also about knowing who the audience is for the event and then trying to figure out what is the through connection from that audience to you. And then that becomes your messaging, what you offer to people, how you creatively market that.
Great. Camille, next question.
Yes, next question. This one's for Amir. How does getting more US visitors benefit road tripping destinations? Is that more than when international and global visitors are visiting, who are more likely to spend more and stay overnight? Is this something that you're looking at with the 2026 lens, or is this regardless of year?
Well, obviously the international visitor is a per person per spend is a higher value than a domestic visitor, because they are going to outspend 3 to 1 as much as 5 to 1 from domestic visitation, because they stay longer. Quite frankly, the length of trip tends to be longer, and they're consuming a lot more of the local product while they're in town. But however, what we're looking at here is an opportunity for a greater volume of visitors. So you're going to make it up in volume, not necessarily in per person spend there. It's not that one is more valuable than the other. It's more of where's the opportunity this year. We're seeing a lot of barriers to entry right now in the international market. Yes, we are going to see a spike. The initial bookings are showing there are going to be a bit of a spike because of events like FIFA World Cup happening in the international market. But we just did some work on the Canadian. We've been tracking Canadian travel sentiment towards the U.S. There's still a lot of issues there. There's still that Canadian visitation, while 80% are still coming, a little over 20% aren't, and of the past volumes that we got. So you have to look at where the biggest markets of opportunity are. Don't give up on Canada. Don't give up on the international markets, but at the same time, double down on your regional drive markets right now. It's just a fact. That's where the greatest bounty and opportunity for growth is going to be this year.
All right, one more question, Camille, and then we'll do our final panelist question.
All right. Suggestions on how to market unique products if you don't have a robust budget or PR person.
Well, that might be us.
Yeah.
We kind of have zero. So I'm looking for who has the money, and can I partner with them so that they will market with me. And certainly, like in an anniversary year, if there were reporters that came to me, or I reached out to do a story, or someone came with an ad package, I'd have to say, I can't do the package, but I can do a story with you. Can we explore other opportunities? So I think you really have to get creative with with social media, also as a lower hanging fruit in terms of budget. Sometimes a little money can go a long way that way too. I very rarely have the money to do a big ad campaign, in part because federal dollars can't be spent that way, and in part just because we just don't have the budget for that. So a little guerrilla marketing.
Good advice. I would say that, and collaborating. I like that you said you're looking for who has the money, but it's not just, tongue in cheek, like literally looking to collaborate with folks who align with, with the cause, and see what you can bring to the table, right, Jean, in a partnership that way. Great. All right. Wonderful. Great questions. Thank you very much. So to wrap us up, our final question is, what did you learn as a part of your experience, and what advice do you have for others who are getting ready to plan or host a major event? And I'm going to start with you, Deborah.
Okay. Well, start early, so early that people make fun of you for starting so early, and let that fuel you to be a kind of indomitable force, to use humor and help get people to have an identity in belonging to this crazy organizing group. My other advice is you can buy my book for loads of concrete strategies and inspiration from the eclipse.
And a good one, I highly recommend. How about you, Jennifer?
What I would say is it kind of goes back to what Deborah and Jean have been saying as well, is that, you know, when you're building these coalitions of people to work on these events and these things that are happening in your community, stay in touch with them. Don't lose touch with them, because those ideas come from that. You might be done with this event, but then all of a sudden someone might have an idea and say, hey, you know what, let me reach out to you. What do you think about this idea? And then something will just naturally come about for your destination. And you know, who you meet along the road is important. And those professionals that you're working with are the ones that are going to help you make that vision happen, whether it's a year out or 2 weeks out. So stay in touch and cultivate those connections even after the event is over.
Absolutely. Jean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll echo some of that, because I think that communication is also value for building confidence in the event itself, for people to feel like they know what's going on and they feel good about it. But my other piece of advice is to think beyond the event itself, and what can you set up during the event that will last. So in our case, we set up an events calendar that now we have it. We built it and it's great. It works. And so now we'll use it forever. We came up with a bucket list of canal experiences. And so it was the bicentennial bucket list, but it can just, we don't have to say it's the bicentennial bucket list. We can see you know, something else, and keep that running. We set up tours for the World Canals Conference that we ran in person, and now we've taken those and made them online self-guided road trips for the future. And then of course, we've got a lot of partnerships that we want to keep going. And you'll also have funding opportunities that come about to build sponsorships for events. And those funding partners are also important to keep involved and keep cultivating for future events and future things that you're trying to do.
Absolutely. And Amir, last but not least.
All right, batting cleanup here. Obviously, can't say enough for reinforcing the whole message of communication with partners, and building off of that, setting and managing clear expectations from all partners. And again, with good communication, managing expectations, setting some clear guidelines or ground rules on who's doing what, that leads to success. And at the end of the day, most importantly, follow through. Follow up afterwards, follow through, continue that, and as Jean said, you keep doing that, you can look beyond.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So thank you to our panelists and our attendees for joining us today. Watch for our next virtual workshop. It's coming up on May 14th with a focus on SEO and artificial intelligence. And registration and details will be coming soon. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap. Bye-bye.